What's up everybody, David here, glad to record another Final Fantasy video, my second one, as I made one a few weeks back called Final Fantasy Isn't For Me Anymore, and that's okay. Now, disclaimer, because I got a lot of interesting comments on that video, this is just my opinion on a topic that I think is fun to discuss. You don't have to agree with me, you don't have to disagree, but feel free to drop your comment and your opinion in the comment sections down below. As long as you keep it civil, I'll have fun reading them. So let's get right into it. Today I want to talk about my experience and my current thoughts on the state of Final Fantasy and what I think the series should do at this point that they are not doing with it. Yes, I'm going to talk about old school Final Fantasy, more precisely about older games that feature a turn-based combat system. Turn-based Final Fantasy is how we're going to call it today. If you are new to my channel, I do weekly RPG content, so make sure you subscribe, ring that notification bell as well, and a quick thumbs up is a huge help if you like the video. Now let's get into it. So I've been a fan of Final Fantasy for years. I just got done replaying Final Fantasy 1 on my Game Boy Advance, more precisely on my analog pocket system, and I had a blast with it. I'm also a fan of turn-based games in general, way more than action-based ones, so I know I am biased. And it's also the main reason why I'm getting less and less interested in every new Final Fantasy release as of yet. Now, my thing is today, I think Final Fantasy needs to come back in a turn-based fashion. And I don't mean dismiss recent entries or don't do what you did with 15, well, yeah, maybe don't do what you did with Final Fantasy 15, but you know, 16 is not a bad game. Don't drop games like Final Fantasy 16 or even 14, which is an amazing success for Square Enix. I'm talking about they should give Final Fantasy to a team that is able to give us a great modern turn-based Final Fantasy. So let me make my point here. There is a lot of modern IPs and modern titles that are able to be extremely successful for publishers and developers that are turn-based, that feature turn-based combat in the RPG genres. I could mention Pokemon, which is the obvious candidate, right? Pokemon, one of the biggest IP of all of gaming, and it's a turn-based RPG series, always has been. But I'm not going to mention it, because to me, Pokemon, with everything surrounding the IP, the anime, the card, the trading card stuff, the figures, everything, it's way too big, it's in another league. But let me talk about other publishers and what these publishers are doing with role-playing games and how successful they have been. Let's start with my favorite publisher, Atlus. Atlus, you can blame them for a lot of things, but you cannot blame them for success because they do have success at the moment, and it was not the case 10 years ago. Good examples for Atlus of modern success are an obvious one, Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. Those games are about at 5 million copies sold for a mainline Persona entry, and Persona used to be pretty niche, so that is extremely big for Atlus as a success, and Persona is a turn-based RPG. Even if you change IP, you can go to Atlus's other big IP, which is Shin Megami Tensei. SMT has been a turn-based RPG for as long as FF existed, and SMT 5, which is the latest mainline installment in the Shin Megami Tensei series, sold over 1 million copies on Switch alone in 3 months after it launched, and that's in 2021. Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal, that's from 2017, from the original release, to 2022 for the remastered version of Royal. So those are recent releases, and they are huge recent success for turn-based RPGs. Now we can go to other developers. I know Atlus is big, but let's look at Koei Tecmo. Koei Tecmo has the Atelier series, which is still fairly niche. I would even consider the most popular Atelier series as niche, which is Atelier Ryza. Atelier Ryza is getting a little more popular nowadays, but it's still fairly niche. It's a turn-based RPG, and that series sold 2 million copies already, which again is a modern series, a series that is about 5 years old. Again, crazy big deal for Koei Tecmo, and another big success as a turn-based RPG. Now let's talk about Sega for a second, and Sega is extremely interesting, especially if you look at Sega's, well, my favorite IP from Sega, which is the Yakuza / Like a Dragon series. Yakuza has been an action-based brawler for over, oh my god, it's almost 2 decades old at this point, and It's a fantastic series that has a lot of longtime fan, always has been a brawler. And regardless of that, in 2020, Yakuza 7 or Yakuza Like a Dragon completely changed the combat for the series. It came from a brawler system, an action-based system, to a turn-based combat system. And here are the results. Yakuza 7 is the best-selling game in the Like a Dragon / Yakuza series, and it's the first turn-based game. Shows how, hey, a 3-year-old game completely changed everything for a 20-year-old series, made it more popular, made it more successful, most importantly, as a turn-based RPG. I can keep going. Indie studios. A few months back, we saw the release from Sabotage Studios of Sea of Stars, which is an indie title that sold 250,000 copies in its first week on the market. As a turn-based RPG, that is extremely huge for a indie developer. The studio themselves said, hey, we're blown away by this success. Even if you're a smaller studio, you can make it work. So how about Square Enix? They are on top. They can totally make it work. Falcom with the Trails of series. This is going to be my last example. Trails of series sold over 7 million copies. You can have success in the 2020s with a turn-based RPG, that is for sure. Now, Square Enix, the developers and publishers of Final Fantasy. Square Enix themselves have huge successes with turn-based. Dragon Quest, the whole series, is very popular and very successful, always has been turn-based for their mainline titles. Let's look at their latest one. Dragon Quest XI alone sold over 6.5 million copies with its original release in 2017 and with the definitive edition releasing in 2019. Crazy successful. Octopath Traveler, a brand new IP that released on one system only at first, Nintendo, sold 2.5 million copies as a brand new IP. Could you imagine if Octopath Traveler was named Final Fantasy and it featured iconic elements and characters from Final Fantasy? I think you can double those sales easily. Bravely Default 2, recent entry as well. It's a 2021 release if I recall correctly. Sold over 1 million. There is room for success, even with Final Fantasy. If you look at their most recent release here, Pixel Remasters, sold over 3 million copies. Again, imagine if Square Enix used even Team Asano, the developers of Octopath, or just created a new team that would be focusing on not the next mainline number entry, not Final Fantasy 17, but just give us a new Final Fantasy game that is a turn-based game. I think it would do extremely well, and I would honestly be very curious to compare it next to the sales of a game like Final Fantasy 16, which was not a flop, but it's certainly a game that didn't do as well as it used to back in the day for previous entries, and it's a huge game that required millions of dollars to make. It is a big graphical and cinematic experience. A turn-based game could feature simpler graphics that you would find in, again, a Shin Megami Tensei game, in a Atelier Riser game, in a Sea of Stars, in a Trails of Cold Steel. Those games are all, you can argue, it's arguable. I know we can argue on this, but those games are not as good looking as Final Fantasy 16, and regardless, they're all doing very well. And some of them are even doing better than Final Fantasy at the moment, and Final Fantasy has the brand recognition. Again, I do want to stress that out. It does not have to be the next mainline installment, the next numbered installment. It can just be a brand new game called Final Fantasy something something something. Make it turn-based, make it look AA. Let me just say that. It doesn't even have to be a AAA game. Make it look AA style visuals, AA style content. Make it a 20-hour game and people will enjoy it. I just spent 15 hours playing a GBA cartridge and I had a blast for an old game. Those games aged really well, and I just wish Square Enix would give old school and turn-based Final Fantasy another shot, because I think there's potential, and I think I proved it today with a lot of games from various different studios in terms of scope and budget, and they're all doing a very good job. There is still a market for turn-based RPGs in 2023, and you can even look at games that are about to release, with Persona 3 Reload, which is about to release. I'm sure that game's going to do really well. Super Mario RPG is also going to do super well. I know those are remakes. You have Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth in January coming out that is also going to do well. And again, I do want to stress it out. The last thing that I'll say for today, it's enough rambling for me, but Final Fantasy, this new title that they could do, which would be a turn-based game, does not have to change anything for Square Enix's plans. You can still give us the Final Fantasy VII Remake. You can still give us this next big cinematic experience in the future if you want to, but I think putting effort into a new side project for Square Enix in the Final Fantasy IP is a good idea. So that's enough for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this little discussion. I do wanted to get those things out of my mind here and discuss them with you guys. Please drop a comment, again, a civil comment letting me know what you think of this topic of discussion. I hope you enjoyed the video. A quick thumbs up would be a big help. And again, if you want more weekly RPG content, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. I hope you have a great day, y'all. We'll see you soon. Bye.